Welcome to B-Rated, B-Rated Conversations. Join us as we talk to the creative people behind the independent movies and get the behind-the-scenes stories. Well, we're here with Allison Shrum and Jay Burleson from the third Saturday in October, parts 5 and part 1.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, these really are like this took me back. This was genuinely like an experience of like going to the video store and it's like I can't find the next one in the series. I got to jump if I want to watch anything. So I got to go forward and then go backwards, and it's like it felt a lot like that. These were really fun like 70s 80s slashers.
Yeah, and that was what we were going for. We started out with part 5, purposely starting with part 5 sort of as the in joke amongst ourselves to kind of the vibe we were trying to capture, really leaning into, some of the films I grew up loving, like Halloween 4 and 5, Friday the 13th, part 6. And it was just kind of that spirit of trying to capture the essence of the slasher franchises once they started kind of going off the rails a little bit. And then, with part 1, we wanted to come back and give it that authentic, as much as possible, 70s atmosphere.
Oh yeah, I definitely felt that there is the distinct difference. Like with part 1, Allison, like your character, like she does feel like the final girl kind of idea. Where, can I say that?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't want to say too much, but where it's like, like that story it's so different. It's like you get the character development, you get the kills all mean something to the killer. I got like a Halloween Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of feel to it. It was kind of cool.
Yeah. I really enjoyed getting to play Heather and getting to find all of that nuance throughout her arc, to not give away any spoilers of how she starts and how she ends throughout the film.
But yeah, it felt like a genuine like 70s female character with a little bit of an edge.
Yeah. I didn't grow up watching horror films. They always scared me a little bit. Probably because my older sister like traumatized me with some really terrifying ones way too young. But when I booked this, I went back and watched the original Halloween, and got a lot of inspiration from Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie, and wanting to bring that same amount of charm and lovability, and to have people really root for Heather and give her more more character and less of a cookie cutter trope that we see in horror films commonly.
Yeah, she definitely has more teeth. It just like there's more of a fight. It's a nice touch. So, what was the sort of origin for this this idea? I know you kind of mentioned the feel you were going for a little earlier.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to make a retro slasher series so that each film could kind of be a period piece and examine, different time periods of not only slasher films, but horror in general. So it's something I wanted to do for almost a decade. And in 2018, we were trying to get this bigger kind of art house slasher film off the ground. And into 2019, we were building our team. That's when I started really working with Frank Crafts, who's a producer on both films, and Ian Cunningham, who's a producer on both of them as well. And our DP, Chris Hillicky, was somebody I was really close friends with and had already worked with. And we kind of set a target fall 2019, we're making a movie no matter what. Like, we have this ambitious idea that we're trying to tackle, and we're building momentum and putting a team together. But, it came clear like summer 2019, we're going to make a movie no matter what. And ultimately, we weren't able to get the money that we really needed to do the other project justice. So we pivoted to part 5, which I didn't have the script for at the time, but I had a lot of ideas, and I knew what the overall plan was in terms of trying to have this retro slasher series. So we just kind of jumped into part 5 and hit the ground running. And then, less than a year later, we were in a position to where we had an opportunity to make another movie. Part 5 was in post, and I had 1 or 2 solid cuts of it. And when we had the opportunity to make something else, it just felt like, let's double down on this concept. And, knowing that I already want to make more of them, it seems like a good idea to just go back and make part 1. And that's kind of when the double feature aspect of it started to develop.
Oh yeah, I mean, you really knocked it out. I think I mentioned this when I talked to the Monster Mash guys, that there's the VHS thing where it looks like a VHS video, but it doesn't feel like a VHS video. It just feels like people acting 80s or acting 90s or whatever. With this, it was just if you were to take this back to the 80s, back to the 70s, people wouldn't know the difference. It just feels like it fits. And
well,
it's a really awesome thing. Yeah. Loved it.
Thank you. Yeah, that was that was the goal. We wanted to try to be as authentic to the individual time periods as we could, and really to kind of establish the world of Jack Riah Harding and the third Saturday in October, so that hopefully we can build off what we've started and tackle a different approach to the slasher genre with some of the sequels. So we're really happy with how it's come together so far, and would be happy to make more of them at some point.
Oh yeah, I mean, so was this for Allison? Would you say what was the experience like, kind of going backwards like this into a more 70s type of role?
Yeah, like I said, I watched the original Halloween. It was the first night on set. I think, Jay, I was talking to you and you said that you loved the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I was like, I've never seen that. And so that next day we had was our little off day, and so I was just in my Airbnb and was like, I'll watch it, and then of course was horrified by it. But I was like, this gives me a little bit more tone of where his head is at, where the style is. But it was, I consider myself a little lucky because it is the origin, it's the original installment, and so I kind of was able to create Heather as she was. I didn't really have anything else to go off of or to try and mimic, if that makes sense, because part 5 wasn't even out yet, and also it's so tonally different, so I really got to start from scratch and build from there, and just tried to make Heather as close to myself as possible, but more so bringing myself into Heather in that time period and in that space, rather than vice versa.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of think there's a nice, interesting take you get when you don't have people that are super, super horror fans or people that have done a ton of horror come in. You get a different, a look and a feel to it. It feels, there's an authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I really enjoyed about it, was getting to bring a lot of heart and realism to her. and that's credit to Jay as well, writing a very charming and lovable character, that it wasn't too far of a stretch for me to fall into that and bring life to Heather.
Yeah, the other character I really enjoyed with part one was Ricky Dean Logan. The whole interaction with Heather Newton and Ricky Dean Logan, it was really fun. Like, he's like the lighter, funner, happier kind of like Dr. Loomis type.
Yeah, for sure. And Dr. Loomis was clearly a reference point on the character, and we were really fortunate, casting Allison. Originally, she was at the top of my list when I saw the people that had submitted for the role, and she had a reel on what she submitted, and I was really impressed by it. And then we didn't get a tape from her, and I think like 2 weeks passed, and our casting director, I believe, was trying to get in touch with her agent. So finally, I just reached out myself and started a conversation with her agent, Kim McCrae. And Kim is a big fan of the original Halloween and worked it out to make sure Allison read. And then she said, well, who else do you need? And we ended up casting Darius Willis, who plays Ricky Dean, and Casey Odd, who plays John Paul, from her agency as well. So we were very close to not having all three of those people. So it was good to see our persistence pay off, because the movie would look completely different if I didn't reach out to Kim, and we were very fortunate to get all three of those actors.
Yeah, and credit to Cookie, that's her nickname. Credit to Kim, because she is such a big horror fan, and especially of the originals, that a little Easter egg in the opening credits is that everyone's cast name comes in normally, and then mine is at the very end, and introducing Allison Shrum, which is a nod to the original Halloween and introducing Jamie Lee Curtis.
That's right.
She was like, I remember she called me almost as soon as Jay had emailed her or talked to her about like finalizing my booking. She was like, I'm going to negotiate this for you because I think it would just be so cool. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's an extra little nod in there in the opening credits.
Yeah, and I can still remember she called me and I was like driving somewhere and she pitched it to me, and I believe she actually pitched it as in Halloween H2O. Josh Hartnett has that same credit, introducing Josh Hartnett or whatever.
That's right, yeah.
So that's how she pitched it to me, and I instantly was like, oh yeah, this is like you're speaking my language for sure. So it was like it wasn't hard to convince me. I was super on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was like it was very different in the like I enjoyed both, but I enjoyed both in like a different way. Where like part one is very much about the characters, and if you change any one of those characters, the dynamic and the chemistry changes, and it's like really a credit to like you, Allison, and the rest of the cast that like you guys play so well together.
Thank you.
Or you all play so well together where that like. It's just fun to watch. It's like scary when it's supposed to be scary. It's light when it's supposed to be light, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a big props to the rest of the ensemble. They all had like a day or two or maybe even 3 days of filming before I even came in. And I remember my first day coming in, I was like, oh man, like they've already had days to like bond, and I'm like the new kid on the scene, and how's it gonna go? And I get there and every single person was just like, hey, what's up? And just really fun personalities. I mean, their personalities on the screen are very close to who they are in real life. Except for Libby, I will say she's much more friendly in real life. Apart from her character Bobby Joe, she's She's much nicer to me in real life, is all I will say. I love that. But yeah, everyone was so great, and just as much as we had a good time on screen together, we had just as much fun behind the scenes together.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask about the meowing scene because it just kind of like pops out of nowhere, and like it's supposed to be like super tense, and then all of a sudden, like everybody starts meowing, and like I just couldn't stop laughing.
That's good. Yeah, I don't know really where that came from in the writing, but it just felt right at the time. And we'd established this weird kind of um, cat mythology in part five, and that was kind of just due to circumstances. We kept having cats just show up on set and end up being in the movie, so then I worked in my own cats, and it felt right for what we were doing because I'm a big college football fan. I grew up watching college football and slasher movies. I grew up with a lot of cats. I grew up on a farm, so we had tons of outside cats, and so it just felt like the perfect addition to the world that we were building. And I wanted to retroactively bring that back in and introduce it in part one in different ways than you might expect.
Oh yeah, it was certainly unexpected. I wasn't ready for that when it happened.
It was just as unexpected in the script too.
Yeah, so this was it's like a college football, basically like a rivalry game, kind of like I was assuming kind of like a Alabama Georgia.
Yeah,
but I don't know if that's the right week.
Yeah, so I grew up an Alabama fan. Frank Crafts, who's one of the producers, Ian Cunningham, they're both big college football fans as well. So it was just, to me, it felt like the perfect combination of life in the South and the small town vibe that we were trying to capture, while also capturing what I love about, like the Friday the 13th films or Halloween, is that there's like a particular date or holiday that they're based around, and college football rivalries, especially in the South, are such a big deal. It seemed like the perfect blend of these elements together to just set it around a college football game, and you have this watch party nature that comes out of that. It just felt really authentic to growing up in Alabama.
Oh yeah, definitely. When I lived in what was it, Leesville, Louisiana for 3 years, and it was Go Tigers, and especially in Leesville, they didn't have a college football team. They only had high school, so it was the Wampus Cats. Yeah. And every Friday night, it's like you knew where people were going to be. If your kid was on the team, it was a big deal, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So like football was it's like second church.
For sure. Yeah, people really get into it. And like you said, if you don't have a college team, then the high school is the big game. And in Alabama, there are no professional football teams. So, well, that's not true anymore. There are these little leagues that are popping up and trying to grow their branding. But, there's no NFL team in Alabama, so everybody gets that much more into the college game.
Oh, yeah. And kind of a little bit about part 5, like the thing that I really enjoyed about that, like the concept gets really clear. It's like sequelitis has kind of hit, and we're so far removed from the original characters that like it's more like a highlight reel at this point. Mm-hmm. And people are making like weird decisions, and you're just like, why would you do that? Why does everybody, keep doing the same thing?
Yep, for sure. That was a big part of the concept, was trying to, lean into the absurdity of those sequels when they kind of start going off the rails. But I love all those movies, even the really unpopular ones in the big, slasher franchises. So to me, it was just an opportunity to play in that world and lean into the part 5 aspects of it. And that was kind of our mantra on set. was, we would have days where things weren't going right or we didn't have the things that we needed, and we would just kind of look at each other and be like, hey, it's part 5. We're going to figure it out one way or the other. We're going to make it work, and just kind of lean into the absurdity of everything.
Yeah, you certainly captured the best parts of a sequel, while leaving out kind of the how do I put it, like the dead time that like a lot of sequels get. So it was,
thank you. Yeah,
fun throughout.
Yeah, it was definitely a choice not to go down the road of introducing any type of cult or further supernatural elements to it. Since it was the first one that we were making, we wanted it to be as straightforward of a slasher movie as possible, and just kind of lean into, I really say the humorous aspects were largely influenced by like Friday the 13th, Part 6, J.P. Loves, even some of like the first 2 Return of the Living Dead movies. Like, those are really my wheelhouse films. I just enjoy the humor in those movies.
Yeah. So, what kind of, I know you've kind of mentioned a few, like what would, like, for both of you, like what would be the movie that, or the horror movie you would say kind of like was the initial influence for you?
Definitely Halloween. I saw the original Halloween when I was maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. My mom showed me pretty much all of the bigger 80s, even some 70s horror movies when I was a kid. So I grew up loving Halloween and being really influenced by that, and wanting to make like fan films before I knew what a fan film was. We would just, as kids, we would just come up with concepts for sequels to some of those movies and just like act them out in the backyard and stuff. So definitely the original Halloween. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also a huge influence, and in particular for Part 1, Black Christmas was a huge reference, just kind of to the look of the movie, and leaning into some of the earlier 70s stuff, like Hills Have Eyes, the grittiness of those movies, Phantasm as well, just like kind of looking at reference points to like the really low budget stuff of the 70s, and going into it knowing that we're pretty much in the same boat financially as some of those films that were made for like, I think Phantasm ended up maybe being like a few $100,000. I think they shot it for under 100,000. So, we tried to be specific in the reference points that made sense to the budget that some of those movies were made with, and how that affected decisions that we were making. And it's also just natural to the fact that we didn't have a lot of money. So we were really leaning into the grittiness of low budget 70s films. And with Part 5, Halloween 4 and 5 are the strongest reference points for me.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I would say once I enjoy like good bad films, particularly of like the monster genre. I just think they're so enjoyable, like the B, C, and D films that come out. They're just really fun for me. So when I booked this was when I was kind of like, okay, I enjoyed those, but I don't want this to be one of those. So kind of like working in opposite of like what are the typical like pitfalls that I guess actors would fall into in those performances, and kind of doing like the opposite. And then of course getting more inspiration again from the original Halloween, and even like watching the newer revamps of that in the most recent years that came out. Definitely still a little bit of watching like this, but I'm coming around to it.
Yeah, I mean, the Halloweens definitely, those did kind of influence me as a kid too. Like I remember like I think I watched it maybe when I was like 10 or 12. And it's like you watch it now and it's like we've like flown past what they do gore wise in that movie, but like they do a lot with the shock factor.
Yeah.
It's
Watching it now, and also having worked on horror films, quite a few as an actor now, I'm like, oh, okay, like logically, I know what they're doing on set, and I know that this isn't real. But particularly like the middle of I think Halloween Kills is the one. I remember watching it and being like, that's really gory. I know that that's fake blood, but that's a lot of fake blood.
oh yeah. So Halloween Kills or Halloween Ends? Would like because I know this is kind of a contention point, a question that for both of you.
I personally was Halloween Ends the most recent one.
Yeah, that's the one with Corey.
I didn't finish that one, if I'm being honest. I watched probably 30 minutes of it, and I like could see what they were doing with it, and I enjoyed it. But because I have gotten more into the Halloween franchise since Third Saturday, I don't know. I was a little uninterested. But I know a lot of people did finish it, and they loved it.
I like both of them for different reasons. I appreciated what Halloween Ends was attempting to do for sure. I think Kills is probably my preference, but like the thing with Ends to me is that I almost don't want Michael Myers to be in the movie at all. Like I would be fine with what I like. I enjoyed the first half of the movie when it was setting up Corey and all of those elements. I felt unsatisfied by how they tied everything together ultimately. But the great thing about the three new Halloween movies, to me, I mean they took the franchise seriously, and they're all three very well made movies, and I enjoy them all on a certain level. And it's great that the Halloween franchise has had this revival. And I'm curious to see what they will do next because, of course, at some point they're gonna do something else with it. But it's great to see the franchises continuing to be a big draw at the box office.
Definitely. I mean, the thing that I'm kind of with you on Corey. Like he's a great character, and I love that movie. I just feel like that third movie is a spinoff, and if you're gonna like let it be its own thing, and like have him be influenced by Michael, as opposed to doing 2/3 of a Corey story and 1/3 of a Michael story.
Yeah, I think the way you said it sums up perfectly how I feel about it. And it was a really bold choice to go in that direction and introduce Corey for the end of their trilogy.
Yeah, it just felt weird and forced. I think if he existed earlier, it makes more sense. And then I don't have anything to argue against.
Yeah.
But I mean, all right. So we'll go to our hard hitting questions.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not as bad as they sound. So, are there any like independent horror suggestions that you have for us? Because we have our ongoing list of movies that we kind of pull from here and there.
Yeah, so if you enjoyed the Third Saturday in October movies and you want more football-centric horror, I was able to catch a faux documentary called The Once and Future Smash at a Panic Fest, and it has a companion piece in Zone 2, which is very similar to Part 1 of the Third Saturday in October in that it's a lost slasher movie from 1970, but Once and Future Smash is a faux documentary about two actors who were involved in End Zone 2, and it taps into the convention scene of horror fans, and a lot of big horror names show up in the documentary parts of it. So if you're a horror fan, you're definitely going to want to check those out. I think I know it's still on the festival circuit right now. Then I'd also like to give a shout out to Kansas Foley, who plays Maggie in Part 5. She's got a movie called Cuddly Toys that's in limited release theatrically right now. Not necessarily a straight genre picture, but I think it's definitely horror adjacent. And also, Owner Takolo, who plays the warden in Part 1, has a slasher movie about a killer who only targets straight white males. It's called Pound Cake, and it's also on the festival circuit. So I expect that it'll be released at some point in the next year. So those would be my recommendations.
Awesome.
I'm going to plug a filmmaker friend of mine here in Nashville. His name's Aaron Murdez. And I've worked with him on pretty much every film that he's put out in some capacity, except for this most recent one that I'm plugging. It's called Bigfoot Trap, and it played at Panic Fest recently.
Yeah, we heard a lot of good things about that.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't mean to jump all over your story, but we met, I can't remember his name now, but we met one of the actors who knew you in Nashville, and he was so kind.
Zach.
Yeah,
Zach. Frank messaged me and said that you guys met him, and he's wonderful. Aaron is such a talented writer and director, and he also edits everything, and it's fascinating to watch him work. I've worked with him on, again, multiple projects since 2017, and seeing his growth as a filmmaker has been really inspiring, and seeing him branch out of specific genre movies and kind of exploring the other realms of what makes horror is really awesome. So I know Bigfoot Trap was the most recent one that came out, and it's I think on Amazon and some other streaming services. Bigfoot Trap.
Yeah, I heard so. Frank really loved it. I didn't get to see it because I'm terrible about going to film festivals and then never watching any movies, but I heard some great things about it at Panic Fest.
Zach is such an amazing actor, and he's so lovable, and Tyler as well, who's one of the main actors. I've known Tyler for a couple of years, and I'm actually working with him as an actor right now in a project soon. So it's a fantastic team.
Awesome. Yeah. And do either of you have any projects that you're working on that you're able to talk about?
Yeah. So I'm also a filmmaker, and I write and direct, and I am working on a film right now that's filming at the end of this month that I'm directing, and that I also wrote, and Tyler is in it. That's what I've got going on. It's not horror, but
not horror? Okay. I'll still check it out.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just kind of decompressing from my life being nothing but Third Saturday in October since fall of 2019, and just kind of trying to figure out like what I'm most motivated to do and what's accessible to me for my next project. And I definitely have a few ideas that I'm toying around with.
And where can people find you if they're looking to, follow and all that sort of stuff?
I'm on Instagram at Allison Shrum. It's just my first and last name together.
Okay.
And you can find me on Instagram under Jay Burleson, and I'm on Twitter as Sweet Brave Pup.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to me, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, Anthony.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This podcast is available on all major podcast networks and YouTube. If you like what you're hearing, please follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.